So you see this big scary monsters, and you play dwarves. And these monsters are guaranteed to push through your front line and trample your ranged core. And what can you do? Normally, you shoot them until your ranged core get compromised, and hopefully finish them off with your melee infantry. Or you go in, throw in as many bodies and slow them down with any abilities at your disposal, and try to stop them before they reach your range core. Well, that don't work all the time because, well, as you can see, you only have so much resources and there are multiple large entities here you have to deal with. And, well, what if I say we have a third option? So this is Tactical Lich here, and today we're going to talk about Dwarven leadership bombs. Yes, Dwarven leadership bombs. You can basically tank their leadership so hard in the first engagement and they just shatter straight away. And how is that done? Well, let me demonstrate it to you. So here we have a Dwarven player that is played by me and a Norscan player. And for the army comms, we have Skin Wolves on one end, Familiar Warriors on the other. Armor piercing and sundering very effective against dwarves. And Marauder Horsemen in the front line. For the infantry, we have one Marauder champion, Marauder Berserkers, two Marauders dotting around along the front line, and we have Feral Mammoths and a Soul Crusher that flanking the Berserkers. As for the Dwarven armies, we have Miners with blasting charges in the front line, and a second line of Dwarves, Longbeards, and more Dwarf Warriors, and backed up by more Longbeards, Rangers, Bolt Thrower, cheap anti-large armor-piercing artillery. We have more Longbeards, two Slayers at the back, as well as a Dwarven Warrior protecting the artillery. And in the middle, we also have Iron Drakes, Grombrindle, Thane, as well as Runesmith. So there are the army comps. And let's go straight into the battle replay. As the battle begins, Norscan player pushing in with Marauder Horseman going to the right flank of the Dwarven player. And as a Dwarven player, I responded with some skirmishing capabilities, with both the Rangers firing at the Marauders as well as the Bolt Throwers shooting down the big kind of scary War Mammoths. This one Feral Mammoth, not much armor, so I was focusing larger more dangerous target. And Skin Wolves are circling towards the back, and Rangers continue to counterfire with the Marauder Horsemen firing at the Dwarven Warriors front line, which is definitely a mistake because with the high armor and as well as missile block chance, they're not gonna get damaged by much, and it's just wasting javelins. In the meantime, the Soul Crusher with its massive HP pool just absorb all that range fire it can get as this for the moment, and Skin Wolves are pushing, circling around the back, but I'm not too worried about it because my Slayers are basically there, always ready to protect them. Some blasting charges were thrown into the Soul Crusher, and despite that it has quite a bit of HP and armor, it's still taking some damage. Now, the engagement in front line has begun. This Feral Mammoth has picked the wrong fight at the wrong place. The Norscan player probably believed that it can bully the Runesmith and other infantry entities, but the problem is I have multiple effects in play right here. First of all, it's getting fired at by the artillery. And secondly, it's getting shot by the Rangers. And it's also getting a burnt effect from the Iron Drakes. And moreover, it's plunged straight into the depths of the front line, and now it's surrounded by multiple entities such as Runesmith, the Thane, and Grombrindle. And as you can see, Grombrindle has popped his rune axe of Grombrindle, giving a discourage effect of minus 16 leadership. So everything here, and we have a look at the leadership, everything here is tanking its leadership. Well, first of all, you have damage sustained, discouraged by the ability, which is from Grombrindle 16 minus 16 leadership, as well as the burnt effect minus 8. So Now it's already dropping into 39 minus 39 in like 3 second first 10 seconds of engagement. And with the flanks exposed, attack in flanked, and under missile fire, everything just accumulated, and now the Pharaoh Mammoth is already breaking. Now as we keep looking at the whole engagement, it's now getting its back turned and just straight out shattered. And when you look at the health pool, it still have, well, over 1/3 of his health left. And this is actually massive because it basically take away one big warrior in my front line, which is about like over 1,000 of the work value worth of gold of my opponent's army. And now I can start focusing down other big threats. Like say here, the familiar warriors are dealing massive damage to dwarf warriors, and now I can peel in more longbeards, put in my hero squad, and start piling on top of Rock and his familiar bodyguards. Now let's keep going. My opponent basically made a big mistake here and just charging a skin wolf straight into the rangers and getting dragged down by his slayers. But the Soul Crusher is still rampaging in the front line, and now it's charging right into the Longbeards in the front line. The Skin Wolves are routing at this point, but so as my rangers. Over here, the hero squad is now reinforcing the routing dwarf warriors. Shame to the ancestors, but hey, slayers and the heroes are here to hold the line, doing massive beating on top of Rock and against these familiar warriors now. And these miners are holding back 2 units of marauders and definitely good for their value. And my opponent has tried to push in with these marauder horsemen, but too bad my longbeards are here to ready response. And with missile fire and my hero squad keep putting the beat down on these monsters, they basically just faltered and have to run away at this point. And the Soul Crusher has not managed to push into my backline because the early route of the Pharaoh Mammoth allowed me to have enough resources to throw in slayers, more warriors to just keep piling onto the front line, dragging down these scary monsters and elite warriors of the Norsca. Now, the Soul Crusher tried to do a bit charging in animation, but with the heavy slayers, heavy dwarven infantry present, they're not gonna push in way too much. So, and at the same time, the flaming effects and all the missile fire has finally broken off these familiar warriors, and now the slayers are chasing them down. And with the combined fire from everything around it, these Longbeards and warriors are still holding back the Marauder champions and the Berserkers, so good on them. And now it's basically cleanup work now as my hero squad pushes into the Marauder front line and just kind of kill off everything that is left. So yeah, and that spells the end of the Norscan army. So you've seen how this build can deal with a large chunky monster like a mammoth, but what about a fast agile enemy that can also push through your units? Say Boris Torbringer on his Griffin. Now, this build actually has the tools to deal with it. There's a reason I brought a Runesmith and a Thane. But now let's look at the opponent's army build. We have a front line of swordsmen backed up by some silver bullets who will be firing into my heavily armored front line and other single entity units. And with a great sword on the left flank, probably to reinforce this flank that does not have any cavalry. Empire Knights on the right flank, and Knights of the Blazing Sun with Jade Wizards to support Boris Todbringer. And at the back line, we have 3 cannons, some massive, devastating firepower from the Empire, and also a swordsman in reserve. And in contrast, I only have this one lone cannon, so the moment I saw these 3 cannons, I was like, yep, I have to drop the cannon and start legging it. So at this point, my whole army is foot slogging over towards the Empire front line, leaving the cannon crew behind. And for the forces, I have 2 miners with blasting charges, and backed up by some Dwarven warriors. In the middle is a warriors of Dragon Fire Pass, and more some Longbeards at the back line, as well as 2 Slayers to hunt down cavalry or just bog down just a more mobile, responsive force. And with a couple Rangers to provide that missile fire leadership debuff, and Iron Drakes for that burnt effect debuff, and we have Grombrindle with his big ol' axe of Grombrindle, and a runesmith and a Thane. And one thing that's notable about the Thane is he has Rune of Slowness that adds another minus 18% speed. So this will come into play later, and now let's just keep the replay going. So leaving a cannon crew behind, firing, let it fire into an enemy doing whatever damage it's worth. Hey, at least it killed a Hammer of Witches model, so there's that. And yep, it's just still getting killed by the cannons at this point. And Boris Toddbringer is getting a little bit brave here and try to swoop in and do some damage. Maybe try some free hits on my miners, but unluckily for him, I brought a runesmith, and that's minus 72 speed is crucial. Like just stopping him right now, as well as the rune of slowness. Now, coupled with the rune of wrath and ruin, now it has a minus 90% speed. So he basically can't move at this point. So my Boris Topbringer is easily caught up by Grombrindle, and with Grombrindle's big ol' axe popped, minus 16 leadership. Now let's look at the numbers. Damage sustained in a short period of time and a quarter of his health gone, it translates into minus 30 leadership. And then have a stronger presence, basically surrounded by all my units, and discouraged by ability, attacked in the rear, losing currently, attacked in the flanks. Everything basically accumulated into something like 380. So basically dropping him down to minus 22 leadership at this point, and as you can see, he just straight up routed. Like that's yes, he took a lot of damage, but normally without the ability and the range firepower, he wouldn't have that. He wouldn't have routed that fast. And now I'm just being able to do some free hits with the Slayers, do some range firepower. Well, thankfully for my opponent, his Life Wizard was there to save Todbringer and just regrowth him back up. But also he has to bail him out with some Empire Knights to just kind of block off my tie down my Dwarven warriors. So now I'm pushing my warriors towards these cavalry and pulling back my hero core. Well, in contrast to the successful engagement of killing, grabbing a chunk out of Boris Todbringer's healing cap, my front line is now slowly approaching towards the Empire front line and successfully evaded a lot of the damage since they were just basically focusing on the cannon. And well, most of my infantry got to the front line intact, so there's that. And these Iron Drakes should have to move a little closer towards the handgunners to get some fire distance. Well, no pun intended right there. With all the swordsmen pinned down, these Slayers are able to slip through the lines and get onto these silver bullets. And intercepted by great swords, but hey, they're good melee fighters and they will hold decently in a fight against great swords. And with the Iron Drakes, even despite being fired at by cannons and handgunners, they still being able to dish out massive fire damage. And with the burnt effect in play, these handgunners are routing earlier than they should be. Like, say here, like minus 3, minus 8. Anyways, so Boris saw this and just tried to dive down and get some hits on these Iron Drakes again. But one thing that's troubling him is that, well, the Rune of Wrath and Ruin has a decently short cooldown, and now it's active again, and with the Rune of Slowness active as well, he's not going anywhere. And now, with Flash Bomb activating, he is just getting pounded by the Dwarven heroes at this point. Like, even the Runesmith, not exactly an amazing combatant, but he's still gonna go and try and get a chunk out of Boris. And now Boris have to pull back and maybe rush into his safety of his men. And the cavalry engagement of my opponent was a little bit messy. He's desperately trying to recharge these Dwarven warriors and Longbeards, trying to break their leadership, but it's not gonna happen. They have decent health left. They're really tanky. Oh, and Boris Todbringer once again getting whacked by this rune axe of Grombrindle. discouraged by ability. Like he would have survived. He would have survived and keep fighting had not been the discourage ability. So like this this discouraging effect of the rune axe is very useful at this point. Like I actually won a game because this axe was able to terrify away a lot of my enemies. But yeah. Anyways, that's not the important thing over here. Anyways, let's go back to the battle. More Slayers and Dwarf Warriors are pushing towards the cannon crew of my opponent, and even with the recharging of the Empire Knights, they're not going to be backing off the fight early enough. And at this point, both cannon crew are shut down. The front line of the Empire was in tatters. Boris is almost out of healing. He is out of healing and almost out of health. So nothing really present to save the day for the Empire, and that basically caused my opponent to throw the towel. So now let's look at the post-battle screen. Grombrindo has got quite a bit of value here. Consider how his axe basically hacked the pod Boris Todbringer. The front line, well, the blasting charges got some value back, and these Dwarven warriors are mainly for high quality speed bumps anyway, so like they're not really gonna do much damage. And the Longbeards didn't really see this one didn't see much action. This one, well, did some fighting, got charged by some knights and got shot, I think. So they got some decent value. And the Slayers, absolute damage dealers, just bogging down Boris Todbringer, hunting down the back lines of the Empire, dragging down the Shiny White Knights. This Ranger is definitely one of the MVPs of the night. Uh, Consider how it just dealt like 1,000 to 300 damage by shooting all kinds of target spores, um, handgunners, silver bullets, a considerable amount of fire support. And Iron Drakes did some damage, routed that one um, handgunners, but didn't really kill it all. But hey, it did some work and lured down Boris Todbringer and, well, allowed my hero core to catch him. So there's that. On the Empire end, not much. Well, um, Boris, consider how he just got hammered and axed by everything around my front line. He did not really earn his worth here. Cannons, well, they basically got distracted by that other one cannon from my end, so didn't really do much damage to the front line. So my front line took a little bit of damage during the approach, but it's pretty safe and sound. And the front line, well, it's Empire front line. You don't expect them to do much here. The silver bullets and handgunners, well, the front line didn't hold up quite well, so that means the back lines are not gonna dish out damage. Great Souls almost earned back their worth, but um, due to being broken early and just wavering the game, it's they could have fought a little longer, I guess. And the Knights definitely not earning their worth of value. Consider how they just charged some heavily armored units, and basically their damage didn't really punch through. So yeah. Alright, so here we are at the army selection screen, and let's have a look at the build breakdown. So we have here a Grombrindo with, well, his big old rune axe of Grombrindo. Now, with this discourage effect of the axe, um, we have a -16 leadership, and that's huge because we have a lot of different means to actually tank the leadership of enemy units. We have, first of all, we have the rune axe. We also have artillery that does another additional -10 leadership, and then we have burnt effect from the iron drakes. So another additional -8. Of course, you can just bring a flame cannon and just combine the two together, but, well, it's better to split the eggs in different baskets and have them do different work. But anyways, we also have another say minus around 5, I think, for getting hit by missile attacks. So this can be produced by both the Rangers and the Iron Drakes, as they both count as just regular missile attacks. But yeah, right here, bolt throwers artillery. So artillery -10, missile fire -5, so that's a 15. And combine that with Iron Drake's burn effect and the discourage effect from Grombrindo, that's um, 16 plus 8, 24, 24 plus 15, 40, no, 39. And that's already like almost half of what you usually see on monsters leadership. Like, and combined with other effects, say flanking, surrounding the units with faster and stronger enemies, which is why we bring a hero squad. And of course, you also bring them for, well, Ruin of Wrath and Ruin, just to pin them down in case the flash bomb wears off. And with that, you basically can produce as high as, like, say, around 50, 60 leadership debuff. So, and with some damage, you just need to do some 30 leadership worth of damage, and then you can have a routing unit. And if you just keep pumping the damage down, you can shatter the unit, just like what I did to that poor mammoth. So yeah, this is a very good combination to just dispatch monsters, especially regenerating ones. But just bear in mind that this is a situational build, because you don't really use this against infantry centric build, because, well, you can't really hit infantry single entities with Iron Drakes that easily. More often than not, they're just kind of blocked by your own men, and you just can't get the fire angle. And also, you really don't have too much of an army to deal with a widespread army, say a skink spam. Like your front line won't be holding long against the infantry rush, and especially if they have some uh, skirmishing cavalry spam, like say the greenskins rushing in with a lot of spider archers, then your back line will be compromised, because first of all, you need significant presence in the front line to just block off the devastating greenskin front line in the form of black orcs and maybe even trolls and all that. Yes, you can send in your hero squad to scare off the trolls, but like uh, your back line will be compromised because you don't have that many units to fend them off. And um, given that a lot of your funds goes into a missile core, Grombrindo himself, and you need to reserve some funds for the Iron Drakes and a decent front line, your artillery game is not going to be especially strong. So, um, yeah, this is a rather situational build where you can do where you can bring and properly use if you expect large monsters. But of course, there are a lot of counter builds against dwarves that does not involve big chunky monsters to push through. So yeah, this build will be slightly more vulnerable to something with a little bit more missile fire and just basically able to just shoot your army to pieces. So yeah, that's gonna be pretty much all I'm gonna talk about this build. And what do you think about it? If you like the video, please do like and subscribe. And if you have anything that you want to tell me, please do feel free to leave a comment down below in the comment section. And yeah, I'll have a look at it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.